So in a world where Donald Trump is putting the hammer down on crime throughout the United States, using Washington, D.C. as the template to begin working going forward. Turns out CNN, the chief data analyst, Harry Enten, is shocked to report that Donald Trump's approval on his handling of crime is way, way up. Let's see what they have to say. This is from Breitbart. CNN's Enten, Americans trust Trump, GOP on crime, way more than the Dems.
Crime, which is what the president says he's doing here. Tackling crime was a key campaign promise and message from Donald Trump. So how do Americans feel about it now as we head into this new chapter? Harry Enten is here. Where do things stand with how people feel about crime right now?
Yeah, I think that Democrats have to get it around their heads that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than they think that they are. What are we talking about? Trump's net approval handling crime. Where was he last year? He was way underwater at minus 13 points views of term number one. But look at where he is now. He's on the positive side of the ledger. He's on the positive side at plus 1 point.
How is this a surprise? This is what blows my mind, that this is always treated like, oh my gosh, how does this happen? Trump, and I guess some members of the GOP, but Donald Trump in particular, is the voice of reason right now. As crazy as that might have sounded 10 years ago, but he's the voice of reason to say, enough of this. We are going to stop criminals running rampant. Ever since the hands up, don't shoot hoax kicked off, the police departments across the U.S. really, really ramped up their or tamped down their efforts to control a crime. There has been a concerted effort to treat criminals as non-criminals at every turn. And personally, I think this all goes back to illegal immigration. And ever since the 1980s, and we granted amnesty, and then the border wall got defunded in the early 90s, and we started encouraging people to come into the country illegally, I've always thought that that was a pivotal moment in American history, because once you say, hey, this law doesn't matter, you can just ignore it and you're fine, then people start to think that other laws don't matter. And now we're in a situation where we had, no bail, garbage like in California and New York, and criminals are being returned to the streets en masse. And in California, they did this little experiment where you could steal up to $1,000 and only get a misdemeanor. Everywhere you look, crime has been forgiven or even promoted. And the Democrat Party has been front and center with this. I don't know what crack they were smoking. Maybe they thought that, that was the future. Or maybe they were so stupid and retarded that they actually thought that, hey, you know what? If we just release the criminals, they'll realize that we really care about them and they won't want to commit crime anymore. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe what is happening in the mind of idiots. But nevertheless, the Democrat Party made every effort to promote crime. And so as crime skyrocketed around the country, the Democrat Party, instead of addressing it, just said, it's really not that bad. Because they would live, especially the politicians, they lived in the little enclaves where violence never really affected them. But the American people said, enough. We don't want this anymore. And at every step, the American people were ignored. And only Donald Trump would come out there and say, no. We're going to put we're going to put a stop to this. I'm going to be the administration of law and order. And in his first term, at every step of the way, they tried to undermine him. But this time around, he came in guns blazing, ready to bring the hammer down. And you can see the drop in crime. I don't understand how anyone is surprised here. I mean, Enten here is constantly surprised. But when it comes to crime, I mean, come on. The Democrat Party is the party of illegal. They are the party of crime. They are the party of do whatever you want. Hurt as many people as you want. And as long as it's not a white on black crime, we don't care.
Americans view Trump far more favorably now on crime than they did a year ago. And while this polling doesn't take into account what's exactly happening in D.C. right now, it does take into account what happened in Los Angeles, what's happened earlier this year. And
I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers go up based on what's happening in D.C. right now.
Americans, for the most part, actually view Trump favorably. Crime is one of Trump's best issues. It's one of the reasons why he wants to talk about crime, because it favors him.
It will be very interesting when you can see polling that has what's happening and rolling out right now settling in to see
if it moves
what the impact really is, because
I think it's
been a lot
up.
of messaging is
Yes.
what we've seen. Compare Trump to Biden in handling of crime, please.
Yeah, okay. I think this sort of gives the game away here, because Donald Trump is like Air Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime.
Well, aside from rampant crime all over the place, you also had a wide open border. 9 million people crossed into the U.S. during Biden's reign. Of course they're going to look at him and say he is not doing much to stop crime.
Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way above
Finally
Joe Biden. What is that? That's 27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden's. And again, I think it gets back to the point that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than a lot of Democrats want to admit.
Americans writ large, but how does it break down by party?
Yeah, okay. So I think that this is, we're talking about Donald Trump here, right? So I think it's very important to note that this isn't just about Donald Trump. It's about Republicans versus Democrats, right? And that, of course, is a key question going into next year's midterm election. I think the party closest to your views on crime. Look, in 2023, Republicans were favored by 13 points. Look at where they were in May of this year. Republicans were actually favored by 16 points. They actually gained ground on crime. They were maintaining their edge and actually added a little bit to it. So Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, they absolutely want to be talking about crime. The more they feel that we're talking about crime, the better they feel that the electoral landscape is for them.
Okay. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Nice.
And none of this should come as a surprise. Again, the Democrat Party has done nothing but encourage criminal behavior. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's about crime, the Democrat Party's right behind it saying, let's get it going. Let's go. More of that crime. Come on, guys. Robbing stores. Well, they must need to feed their families. It doesn't matter. It's always okay with the Democrat Party. And you have to, unless, of course, we're trying to vote for Trump, then you're deplorable. You're a bad person, I guess. But outside of that, as long as you're voting for them, the message is do whatever the you want, be whatever kind of a bad person you got to be, and as long as you don't, upset the DEI apple cart, it's okay. So how can you be surprised is what I want to say. And this takes me to a story that maybe some of you might have seen. This came out, I think, a day or two ago. And this is in Washington, D.C., where you now have the troops with Donald Trump coming in to protect Washington, D.C., you've got people from the black community saying, hell yes, we love this. This is great.
At a red light with my window down, not worried about it. Finally able to chill at a red light with my window down, not worried about if one of them young niggas is coming. Ride through the city. Feeling more safe than I ever felt. I really just be trolling. But no funny. It has been quiet as shit, like for 2 days. That's good. I don't need to be taking nobody loved ones and babies and all that shit. I need to be doing all that.
This is a big deal. When you allow crime to run rampant and to do nothing to tamp it down, let alone dealing with the epidemic of children being born to single-parent homes, which perpetuates crime in many instances, because when you have fatherless children running around with no one to help guide them, well, Big Daddy government sucks at doing that for you, and so you can just look at the jail statistics to see how many are single-parent children who grew up to become criminals. But then when you add to that the complete lack of discipline in dealing with criminal behavior by these Democrat-run cities, well, and by the way, in a separate video And the New York Post mentions it here. It's funny because she's calling it Trump's law. And that might very well become the meme that sticks. Because nobody else outside of Trump seems to care this much about dealing with crime. So it's going to be a wild ride, my friends. But it is looking good. We might see real reduction in crime coming to a future near us. So buckle up.